I was literally put in a garbage can once in a classroom by the teacher. I was told to stand in a garbage can. I wonder what would have happened if something other than that had occurred. The abuse happened for me when I was 11. The mines are closing down in where I lived, our family lived. And my father had said, I'm going down to Toronto to look for work. You take care of your mom and brother and sisters. Absolutely no problem. 24 hours later, a man had grabbed me by my throat and dragged me into a room in a house that was next door to the apartment where we were living. He attempted to assault me. He was a member of the Cub Scouts. He was one of the, surprise, one of the volunteer adults. He had thrown me on a bed, and it wasn't like in the movies. This isn't about grooming. This isn't about any of that. It was a physical, violent assault. I jumped up. As I jumped up off the bed, one of the children in that household came home. The next day, I was walking by where he lived. He ran a little repair shop for bicycles and all of these different things. And he pulled me, grabbed me by my arm and said, come here. I went in, and he proceeded to tell me what he wanted me to do. I grabbed a wrench on a table that was beside me. I'm 11 years old, and I'm terrified. And I hold the wrench up and I say, no. What happened for me in that moment is I said, no one is ever going to hurt me or my family again. When I was walking to school, everybody looked different. All the other kids, I thought there was something different about them. But of course, it was something different about me. Something had been hurt inside. The first person that you don't really have a trust relationship with is yourself. That's the first in that event. After that event, I just didn't trust myself. And so what that meant for me was putting myself in kind of many different precarious positions to see if I would get out of it. And so that's a trust exercise, like, the proverbial falling back into somebody going to catch you or those kinds of things. Well, I was constantly putting myself in precarious positions to see if I would get through it okay. I didn't have boundaries. I did whatever, whenever, whatever I wanted to do. And of course, that was just a response to the trauma, to show myself that I could take care of myself in any situation. That led to not doing well at school at one point, and missing a lot of classes, but eventually making my way through school. The principal's name was Mr. Tate at the school. Just about every Friday, it got to the point where he said to me one Friday, he said, it must be Friday, Arthur, because you're in my office. And we got to be friends over the years. And back then there was corporal punishment for acting out, and I was acting out, and I would get the strap. What would have happened if somebody just sat with me? What if that person said, let's go for a walk out on the school grounds. Let's just go for a walk and check things out here. My guess is I probably would have said something. I would have started to talk. Shame is like somebody comes along and you're the only one can see it. And they put this really heavy, wet, cold blanket over your body. And it just pushes down on your neck. And it just wraps itself around you. And there's this feeling that it'll never go away, that you're too weak to take this off your shoulders, this shame. And so it can be, you don't want anybody else to see it because you think it's how your brain is working now, the thoughts that you're having, it's how you carry your body, it's how you feel inside, it's how you see yourself in a relationship to any other human being that you come into contact with. It distorts your sense of boundaries, and it's cancerous. There was a person who called into the radio station here in Toronto the other day talking with Maria, the executive director of the Gatehouse, and they were talking about the issue of abuse. And the woman on the radio, she'd phoned in from the other end of Canada, out in British Columbia somewhere, I believe, and said, I'm 80 years old. This is the first time I'm mentioning it, and she's talking on the radio. I just didn't want to die with this secret. 80 years old, and she's talking on a national radio station. So telling your story is unbelievably powerful. It gives people strength. It gives people hope. There's a joyfulness, actually, that can come out of this, to know that I'm not being held back anymore. When I was teaching at the college and doing different talks at different other colleges and universities, after I would be talking about domestic and violence and abuse as their course curriculum, I had always said at the start of the talk, the way I tell stories, it might percolate something up for you. So if that does happen and you feel you need to talk, I'm really glad to have a cup of coffee and we can sit and chat. And the student came up to me and said, I want to take you up on that coffee. So I said, okay. On this occasion, it was raining. I said, can we get a coffee over here at the coffee shop and we'll just sit in my car if that's okay? And they said yes. So we literally drove up the laneway that goes onto the campus grounds and we stopped. One of the first things the person did was turn to me and say, I just want to tell my story. They went on to say how they'd been to different counselors, and every time they went to a counselor to talk about their abuse as a child, they felt they were being put into a particular modality, that they were being told how they should, in quotes, tell their story. And it was really frustrating to the person. Then she just told me this incredible story, what she had experienced. And as she was talking, the windshield wiper would go, and each time it went, I looked over and there was this house sitting here, abandoned. The roof was fallen in on itself, was all boarded up. And as she was telling me her story, I thought, wouldn't it be amazing if there was a house where people could go and tell their stories and get strong again, because they're strong people. So that's what I did. I decided at that very moment, I'm going to go and build this house. I put an ad in the local paper for a community meeting to talk about this. Over 70 people showed up to the meeting. And that's when we started it. And the house has been going now for 26 years. And in the 26 years now, there's been over 20,000 people impacted by the Gatehouse. I had a Tai Chi instructor many years ago. We were doing some work together, and she came over to me and she said to me, Arthur, don't move so fast. And then she looks at the ground, she looks back up at me and she said, you want to move fast, move slow. Just let that sort of settle. That impacted me strongly with building the Gatehouse here, that we would move slow. I've had people say, I'm just not ready to come to the Gatehouse Art, and they'll often say, so don't think badly of me. And my response to that is, I invite people, even if it's on the phone, but in person too, I often will say, let's just take a breath together. And breathe out. Let's just take one more breath together. And breathe out. And then I just simply say, is there anything that you feel or would like to say? My experience has been then, people start to tell me more about what the shame is, what the silence feels like. And I make it really clear, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not here to do anything, to make anything happen. I'm simply being with you at this moment in time. I want to be with you. I don't want to do anything for you at all. There was a fellow in the men's group. It's 15 weeks long. Week 6, he had only said one word on day 1, hello, and he never spoke. 6 weeks later, he says, can I say something? We said, yeah. This incredible, poetic articulation came out of this guy. And you're just thinking, like, this is so beautiful. It was respecting his silence that's what he was sharing, was his silence. We have to create spaces for people to express their silence in whatever way they choose to do that. Explore your fears. That's the healing journey. What am I afraid of? What have I been afraid of forever? And when I get to explore that, and I don't fall through the cracks in the floor, I don't crumble, I might start to cry, I might go into a certain position, any of those things, but you're still there. Transformation is about changing your state, about how you see yourself in the world. I no longer see myself like this, I see myself like this. I'm comfortable in my own skin. I'm able to talk about whatever I feel I want to talk about. I'm not wrong to talk about it. And actually, when I talk about it, not only does it help me, but man, it helps another human being. What we're talking about that becomes transformational is a person moves from a state of isolation into a state of community. It's beautiful to watch. I think the bravest thing you can do is this. Extend your hand outward so that somebody else can put their hand in there if they so choose. One of the fellows came through the Gatehouse in the 60s at the time. And he walked in, we said hello, got a coffee, and he said, that was the longest short walk of my life, going up those 5 steps. And I've been using that statement ever since then. That going up those 5 stairs into this place to meet somebody you don't know, and now you're going to tell this person the most intimate horror story of your life, is an act of wondrous courage. That's how I view it. Those 5 steps that people come up, the longest short walk of their life, is incredibly brave. Incredibly brave. I'm hoping that the Survivors Council brings people together from across the country and around the world, really, in such a way that we can share thoughts, not win arguments, not be smarter than the next person, but share our stories in such a way that it has the capacity to create genuine, authentic, transformative social change. When somebody is being harmed, that we've already put in place, based on this idea of transformation, policies and practices in our school systems that are teaching our children how and what to do when they have experiences like we're talking about here today. Let's hear from the person who needs to talk in such a way that they feel safe to tell their story. That's what we need to be doing. When you want to tell your story, first of all, the people here at the Gatehouse are here for you. Secondly, you get to tell the story the way you want to tell your story. The person who has yet to call the Gatehouse, I know the phone will ring. That gives me hope. Somebody's going to phone the house and hear somebody's voice, and they'll hear somebody say to them, "I'm really glad you called us." Just imagine that you get to say, I'm having this really terrible thing, and somebody said, "I'm really glad you called me." That gives me hope.